The air in the gym shifted the moment she walked in, though most didn't notice. Kiana Moore, quiet and focused, entered Whitmore's Jiu Jitsu not as a beginner, but as someone with secrets stitched into her very being. They saw a black woman, a newcomer, an outsider. They didn't see the calm confidence in her step. They didn't see the storm coming. 14 seconds after stepping onto the mat, the room fell silent as Logan Bradley, local champion, cocky, and grinning, was pinned, defeated, and humiliated before an audience of millions. What no one expected, that Kiana's silence held more power than anyone's shout. They didn't know her past. Beneath her stillness lived Spectre, a name erased. From records, her existence buried. An elite operative, once presumed dead, forged in the kind of fire only combat can teach. Her every move had once been a mission, her every breath coordinated. And now, one viral video had not only shattered a room full of assumptions, it had exposed her identity to the very forces that had stolen her brother and tried to erase her family. This mat wasn't just about earning respect. It had become ground zero in a much bigger fight, for truth and for survival. But before we dive back in, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. And if these stories move you, go ahead and subscribe, because tomorrow's episode, it's one you'll never forget. Outside the Whitmore Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Academy, Kiana sat in her parked car, the sounds of grunts and bodies hitting mats echoing faintly through the walls. She inhaled slowly, letting the air fill her chest before exhaling just as deliberately. Her black hoodie and gray sweatpants were simple, almost anonymous. She wasn't here for flash. She was here to remind herself of who she still was beneath it all. She scanned the building, red bricks, wide windows, and mostly men walking in, most of them white. She touched a small scar above her right eyebrow, a reminder of battles no one in that gym could begin to imagine. Then she stepped out, shoulders square, and headed toward the door. The scent hit first. Sweat, sanitizer, and something else. Ego, maybe. Inside, voices bounced off the walls, mostly jokes and jabs between training partners. As she reached the front desk, a young man with short blonde hair stayed glued to his phone. He didn't bother to look up. "I'm here to sign up," Kiana said. His name tag read Troy. He finally glanced at her with a half smirk. "You sure you're in the right place?" he asked, eyes flicking past her toward someone else, who seemed to share the joke. "I'm sure," she replied, unfazed. Troy shrugged and handed her a clipboard, not even meeting her gaze. "Fill this out. Waivers on the back. Coach will see if you're a good fit." Kiana took the clipboard and focused on each blank field, ignoring the growing buzz of whispers behind her. Name, address, emergency contact. She paused, then wrote none. When she handed it back, Troy barely glanced at it. "First class is free. After that, you join or you don't." She nodded. "Understood." As Kiana stepped onto the mat area, the energy in the room shifted. Conversation died. 20 men, some mid-drill, others just standing, turned to look. GIs in white, blue, and purple filled the space. They weren't used to women on the mat, and definitely not women like her. "Lost, sweetheart?" someone called from the back. The voice belonged to a bulky man with a blue belt and a laugh that echoed a little too loud. Kiana didn't respond. She just stood at the edge, still, waiting. Then came Coach Whitmore. She'd seen his face online, crew cut, black belt wrapped proudly around his thick waist. He walked like a man who'd never had to second-guess his place in a room. Confident. Loud. "Well, looks like we've got ourselves a new face," he said, projecting his voice for everyone to hear. He didn't know she was about to teach them all a lesson they wouldn't forget. The moment Coach Whitmore's eyes landed on Kiana, it was like he'd already made up his mind. "You ever trained before?" he asked, sizing her up. "Some," Kiana replied simply, not giving him more than he deserved. He tilted his head, lips curling into something between a grin and a smirk. "Some," he repeated loud enough for others to hear. A few of his students chuckled, catching the tone. "Well, let's see what some looks like. We don't coddle folks here. This ain't some cardio class." Then he turned to the group. All right, boys, looks like someone's got something to prove today. And just like that, class began. No welcome, no explanation. The warm-up kicked off without a word. Everyone dropped into motion. Forward rolls, backward rolls, shrimping across the mat like they'd done it 100 times. Kiana didn't hesitate. She mimicked them with precision. Her form was clean, smooth, almost too good for someone claiming just some experience. But no one seemed to catch on. Or maybe they didn't want to. "Partner up," Coach barked. In a blur, everyone grabbed a partner except Kiana. She stood alone while the mat filled with pairs. Coach called out, "Troy," waving over the front desk guy, now dressed for class. "Show our guests the basics." Troy groaned loud enough for everyone to hear. "Lucky me," he muttered as he shuffled over. The drill was simple. One person lays flat while the other passes their guard. Troy dropped to his knees between Kiana's legs, already annoyed. "Hands go here," he said roughly, yanking her arms into place. "And legs like this. Not that it matters. You're not stopping me anyway." Then he drove forward hard, digging his elbow into her thigh as he tried to take control. Kiana winced slightly, but didn't resist too much. She gave him just enough pushback to keep it interesting. When it was her turn, everything changed. She moved with calm, focused control. No showboating, just solid technique. Her pass was smooth, textbook perfect. Troy's eyes flashed with surprise before he tried harder, pushing back with strength and jerky movements. But Kiana stayed grounded, riding out his efforts until she passed his guard cleanly. A few nearby students paused to watch. "Beginner's luck," Troy grumbled. The drills ramped up. Burpees, bear crawls, and sprawls. The energy in the room shifted. Then, halfway through class, the front door opened. A tall, muscular man stepped. No GI, just a tight rash guard and board shorts stretched over a powerful frame. Heads turned. The air got quiet. Everyone straightened up. "Logan!" a few guys called out. "Logan Bradley." Kiana recognized him from the gym's website. Local, champ poster boy, pride of the team. He walked in like he owned the place, tossing high fives as he crossed the room. Then he saw her. He blinked, then exaggerated a slow look around her, pretending to search. "Yo, coach," he called out with a wide grin. "You let her sign up, or is it bring your kid to work day?" Laughter broke out across the mat. "Coach." Whitmore smirked. "New blood," he said. "Says she's trained a little, that right?" Logan eyed Kiana up and down. "Well, don't go soft on her. Wouldn't want her thinking Jiu Jitsu's a walk in the park." What followed was less class, more trial by fire. Every drill pushed for exhaustion, endurance over technique, pain over form. Kiana's hoodie clung to her by the end, drenched, sweat. Still, her breathing was calm, steady. She'd been through worse, and it showed. As class ended and people headed for the locker rooms, Kiana lingered. She felt someone beside her. A quiet presence, a young guy with kind eyes and a white belt handed her a small ice pack. "For your shoulder," he said softly. Troy went too hard. He always does. He glanced over his shoulder, cautious. "I'm Cody," he added. "Kiana." "You did good today," he whispered, almost afraid to say it too loud. "They don't talk like that to anyone who doesn't look like them," Cody said, eyes flicking nervously to the side. Kiana raised an eyebrow. "Different?" she asked. He nodded, swallowing hard. "You know, not one of the guys." His gaze shifted toward the whiteboard on the wall, an internal ranking system of top students, not a single woman's name on the list. "They joke about it all the time," he added quietly. "It's pretty messed up." Kiana didn't respond right away. She simply said, "I see." "You coming back?" Cody asked, hopeful. Before she could answer, a loud voice cut through the room. "Hey, princess, making friends with the newbie?" Logan stood nearby, toweling off sweat from his neck, eyes locked on Cody. The tone in his voice carried weight. Cody shrunk under it. "Just being polite," he muttered, backing down. Logan smirked. "Sure, real polite." As he passed, he bumped into Cody's shoulder with enough force to knock him off balance. Later, after she had showered and changed, Kiana walked past the men's locker room. Voices drifted out into the hallway. Bet she doesn't last a week. Just another Insta girl pretending to train. Still, did you see that ass? Kiana kept walking, her face calm and unreadable, but each word hit like a slap. That night, in her small apartment, she sat on the floor beside her bed, cross-legged and quiet. She opened a wooden box and took out an old belt, not one for Jiu Jitsu, but a military belt worn and stitched with patches most civilians wouldn't recognize. Her fingers gently traced the emblem of a special unit that didn't officially exist. Beside it was a photo. Kiana, in desert camo, smiling with her arm around a man who looked just like her. Same eyes, same grin. Her brother, both wearing the same patch. "I'm not here to play," she whispered to the silence, placing the belt back in its case. 3 days later, Kiana walked back into Whitmore's gym. She had already paid the membership fee without blinking, and Troy's eyebrows had lifted when she handed him her card. She arrived early, wrapping her hands in black tape, breathing slow and deep while others trickled in. Coach Whitmore entered, Logan right behind him, grinning like he owned the place. When the coach saw Kiana, his eyes narrowed. "Didn't expect to see you again," he said. "Hope you're ready to work today." Class started with takedowns, everyone partnered up. Kiana waited, no one came to her. "Rocco," coach said, pointing to a heavy-set man with a brown belt. "Show the new girl how we do takedowns, Rocco." Stepped forward, a smirk already on his face. He towered over Kiana, wide shoulders and thick legs. "Don't worry," he said loudly. "I'll be gentle." They slapped hands. The drill began. Rocco charged like a linebacker, slamming into her with a double-leg takedown that felt more like football than jiu-jitsu. Kiana hit the mat hard but popped up without a word. Next time, she sprawled perfectly, clean and controlled. Not flashy, but just enough to slow him down. His smirk faded. When it was her turn to shoot, she nailed a textbook single leg. It caught him off balance. He recovered with brute strength, lifting her and dumping her hard onto the mat. "That's not technique," she said quietly. But it worked. Rocco shot back. They moved on to groundwork. Coach Whitmore demonstrated an armbar from guard, then turned everyone loose to drill. "Control is key," he called out. "Tap before it hurts. We're not snapping arms today." Then with a pointed glance at Kiana, he added, "Most of us anyway." Once again, Kiana was paired with Rocco. He moved fast, locking her arm aggressively. The form was right, but he cranked it hard, wearing a twisted grin. Pain shot through her elbow, but she didn't flinch. Instead, she slipped free with a perfect escape. Fast, smooth, almost impossible given the angle. Rocco looked stunned, then angry. "Lucky move," he muttered. They reset. This time, Kiana was on top. She set up the armbar exactly as shown, applied just enough pressure. Rocco tapped. "Again," he demanded. 3 more times, they repeated the drill. Every time they reset, Rocco came at her harder. But no matter how aggressive he got, Kiana met him with calm, technical control. And somehow that only made him angrier. He couldn't break her, and it showed. During a short water break, Logan leaned into Coach Whitmore, speaking in low tones, his eyes cutting toward Kiana again and again. Coach gave a small nod. Moments later, he clapped his hands. "All right," he called out. "Let's move into live drills." He pointed to the center mat. "Logan and Daniel, show us how it's done." Logan and a purple belt named Daniel squared off in a flashy sequence that felt more like a performance than a real role. Logan dominated, ending with a showy submission that earned cheers and respectful nods. Then Coach turned, eyes locking on Kiana. "Let's mix it up. Logan, why don't you show our new friend what a real role feels like?" Logan grinned. "Gladly, Coach." Kiana stepped forward, her face unreadable. They slapped hands, and Logan went in hard. Right away, he drove his shoulder into her collarbone with a force that made her gasp. It was intentional. "That's what happens when you hesitate, sweetheart," Coach called from the sideline. Logan took dominant position quickly, but the moment he tried to settle, Kiana adjusted. Her movements weren't flashy or aggressive, just smart. Small shifts that forced Logan to work harder than he wanted to admit. His frustration showed in his tightening grip and gritted teeth. He pushed. Harder. She never broke, never gave him what he was looking for. She stayed in that in-between space, defending just enough, never revealing her full skill. Not yet. Across the room, a young woman with auburn hair watched closely. Rachel Whitmore, Coach's niece and one of the gym's few female students, narrowed her eyes. Unlike the others, she noticed the discipline in Kiana's form, the calm control. She saw what the others didn't. Class moved into King of the Hill, a drill where one person stays on the mat until someone makes them tap. Cody, nervous and quiet, was nudged forward to go first. 3 rounds in a row, he was tapped fast. Every time, the room echoed with louder jeers. Maybe he should join the kids' class, someone shouted. When Kiana stepped onto the mat to face him, the mocking got worse. Go easy on him, new girl. This should be fun. Don't hurt her, Cody. They started slow. Kiana let Cody work his way into positions she could have shut down in a second. Then, as she gained control, she whispered softly, Frame your arm here. Now bridge. To his own surprise, Cody escaped. He blinked, stunned at himself. The jeers didn't stop. Let her take your back too while you're at it. You gonna let a girl beat you? Then Logan's voice cut through, loud and sharp. Pathetic. After class, Kiana stayed behind, retying her belt slowly as the others filed out. That's when she overheard something. Voices coming from Coach's office. The door was cracked open. She's had real training, Coach Whitmore was saying. More than she's letting on. So what? Logan replied casually. Let her have her little moment. She won't last. Coach's voice lowered, but Kiana heard every word. She doesn't fit here. This gym has a certain culture. Reputation. I'll take care of it, Logan said. By next Friday, she'll be gone. Kiana didn't flinch. She pulled out her phone, pressed record, and held it near the crack in the door. She captured every word. Then, just as the door began to open, she slipped the phone into her pocket and walked toward the water fountain, pretending not to have heard a thing. Logan and Coach stepped out, nodding to each other. Kiana kept her back to them. Later, inside the women's locker room, just a converted storage space with one shower, Kiana stood alone, wiping sweat from her face. Then the door creaked open. Rachel walked in. They exchanged a quick nod. Nothing more, nothing less. As Kiana gathered her things, Rachel walked over, her steps cautious but steady. You've trained before, she said. It wasn't a question. Kiana simply shrugged. Some. Rachel studied her quietly, then pulled a folded piece of paper from her gym bag and slid it across the bench. These are open mat hours, she explained. Mostly mornings. It's quieter then. Fewer of them. Kiana glanced at the paper, then up at Rachel. Why are you helping me? Rachel's expression sharpened. Because I see what goes on here. I'm not the only one. She zipped her bag shut. Just be careful. They don't like being shown up. That night, Kiana's sleep was shattered by the kind of dream that felt all too real. Gunfire. The sting of desert wind. Her brother yelling her name as they sprinted for cover. Helicopter blades thumping overhead. A sudden flash, white, then black. She shot up, gasping for air, her sheets soaked in sweat. Instinctively, her hand reached toward her nightstand for a weapon that no longer existed. The clock read 3:17 a.m. She didn't even bother trying to go back to sleep. Instead, she got up and moved. Her body slid into old rhythms, submissions, escapes, transitions. Forms drilled so many times they were etched into her bones. Her breath deepened. Her mind cleared. For Kiana, Jiu Jitsu wasn't just a skill. It was a language, a way to find peace in chaos, a thread of control woven through violence. The next morning, Kiana returned to the gym during one of the times Rachel had circled. The place was nearly empty. Just a few focused students quietly working through drills. No Logan, no Coach Whitmore, no eyes full of judgment. She warmed up in silence, moving freely now. Her technique flowed with ease, precise foot placement, clean weight shifts, subtle timing. There was no hiding how much she truly knew anymore. During a positional drill, she pulled off a rare sweep, one typically seen only at elite levels. Her partner, a quiet blue belt, blinked in shock as he hit the mat. "Where'd you learn that?" he asked, genuinely impressed. "Here and there," Kiana replied, offering him a hand. The next day, Cody caught up with her in the parking lot after class. His voice was low. "I should probably warn you," he said, eyes darting nervously. "Anyone who embarrasses Logan, they usually don't last long." Kiana looked at him. "What happens?" "Different things," Cody muttered. "One guy had his car keyed, another got accused of something he didn't do. Some inappropriate touching during training. Total lie, but it stuck. Most just get bullied until they give up." She paused. "Why do you stay?" He hesitated, then shrugged. "No other gym nearby, and—" he kicked at a rock. "I get picked on everywhere. At least here, I'm learning how to fight back." Kiana gave him a slow nod. "Thanks for the heads up." That night, she sat in her car outside the gym long after it had closed. Rain tapped against the windows, fogging the glass. She watched the building in silence, thinking she could leave. There were other gyms farther away, but without the poison, she could report the abuse, but she knew how that story usually ended, especially for someone like her. Or she could stay, not for pride, but for truth. Kiana stepped out of the car, letting the rain soak through her jacket. She walked up to the gym, swiped her keycard, and entered. The lights flickered on, revealing the empty mats where she'd been mocked, challenged, tested. She stood in the center of the room, water dripping from her sleeves, eyes steady. "You don't scare me," she said into the quiet. "I've lived through real war." The next week, everything felt different. The tension was thicker, the silence heavier. Whispers died when she walked by. Eyes followed her movements more closely. Something was coming. She adjusted her plain white GI and stepped onto the mat. "Coach." Whitmore stood at the center, arms crossed, that same smug smirk playing at his lips. Logan stood beside him, eyes shifting toward the door like he was waiting for a cue. When he saw Kiana, a grin crept across his face, hungry and mean. "Circle up," Coach barked. The students formed a half circle in front of him. Kiana took her spot on the edge, sensing the careful space the others left around her. "Today's special," Coach said, his voice thick with performance. "Every once in a while, we need to check where we really stand." Coach Whitmore's eyes landed squarely on Kiana. His smirk barely masked the message behind his words. "Let's see who really belongs here." A wave of energy moved through the room, some excited, some tense. Cody stood just a few steps from Kiana, his expression tight with worry. "It's challenge day," Coach announced, and the more experienced students immediately perked up. He let the silence stretch before explaining further. "For those who are new, this is tradition. We pair up, test each other. No excuses." He gave Logan a nod, and the tall fighter rolled his shoulders, already preparing himself like a soldier walking into battle. "It's been too long since the last one, Coach." Coach smiled. "Yeah, it has." Then his attention shifted fully to Kiana. This time, the condescension wasn't even hidden. "It'll be a great chance for newcomers to see where they really stand. What they're made of." He sighed dramatically. "Hope nobody cries when they get tapped." Laughter bubbled up around the room. Logan's was the loudest. Then Coach's tone shifted. "Let's make it interesting." He walked right up to Kiana, standing just close enough to violate her space. "What do you say, Miss Moore? You've been showing up, working hard. Think you've got what it takes?" Kiana didn't flinch. "Depends on the wager." His eyes gleamed with something sharp and cruel, though he tried to make it sound playful. "Simple. You face our best," he said, jerking his thumb toward Logan, who puffed out his chest. "One live roll. If you win, you get a year of training. On the house." "And if I lose?" Kiana asked, her voice steady and unreadable. Coach's grin widened. "Then you find another gym, one that's more your speed." The room went quiet. Everyone understood the real meaning. Get out. Don't come back. Logan stepped closer, towering over her. "You scared?" Kiana glanced between them. She saw it for what it was, carefully planned. A public setup crafted to break her down. The pressure, the performance, the humiliation that was supposed to follow. "Deal," she said calmly. The word landed like a punch to the gut. Coach blinked, surprised by how quickly she accepted, but he recovered with a clap of his hands. "Friday, night, 8 o'clock, we'll make it a show." "My funeral, huh?" Kiana replied, echoing the same words she'd overheard Logan say earlier to another student. Logan's eye twitched, but he forced a smile. 14 seconds, sweetheart. That's all you'll last." The rest of class had a different energy now, charged, on edge. Groups rotated through drills, but the whispering never stopped. By the end of the session, Kiana heard students quietly inviting friends to come watch. A crowd was already forming in their minds. As she packed up, she spotted Coach Whitmore pinning a flyer to the bulletin board. It was rushed, printed on cheap paper. Challenge night watched Logan Bradley defend Whitmore honor against all comers. The word comers had been crossed out with a red marker and replaced with women. Underneath was a cartoon, an ugly sketch of a woman face down on the mat. It was clearly meant to be her. In the locker room, Kiana was changing when the door swung open. Rachel walked in, her face tight with worry. "Don't do it," she said flatly. Kiana kept packing. "Little late for that." "No, you don't understand," Rachel said, lowering her voice. "My uncle, he never fights fair. This isn't about the sport for him, it's about power." "I figured that out on day one," Kiana replied. Rachel shook her head. "You don't get it. He'll do anything to win. Logan once dislocated someone's shoulder during a challenge match. Another guy? His water bottle was tampered with. He got too sick to compete. Nothing ever gets proven. But it happens." She stepped closer. "I've grown up around men like my uncle. They rewrite the rules the second they feel threatened." Kiana zipped her bag and stood tall. Her voice was calm, quiet. "I've known men like him my whole life. I'm still standing." Rachel studied her, seeing something deeper now. "There's more to you than you let on, isn't there?" Kiana didn't answer. She just slung her bag over her shoulder and said, "See you Friday." Later that night, Cody waited outside in the cold, his hands shoved deep into his hoodie pocket. His breath turned to clouds in the chilly air as he watched Kiana walk toward him. He hesitated, then spoke. "I was thinking, maybe I could help. You train before Friday, if you wanted." He shifted nervously, eyes on the pavement. "I mean, I know I'm just a white belt, but I've watched Logan roll 100 times. I know his setups, the stuff he always goes for." Kiana tilted her head slightly, studying him. "Why would you do that?" Cody looked down, then lifted his eyes. "Because what they're doing isn't right." He paused, took a breath, then added, "And I've been keeping track. Screenshots, locker room recordings. Just in case they try anything dirty during your match." Her eyebrows rose. "That's risky." Cody shrugged with a small, crooked smile. "Yeah, well, guess I'm not the only one tired of their crap." The next few days moved in a blur. The so-called challenge match had become bigger than anyone expected. Flyers were plastered across the gym, each more mocking than the last. Word spread that Logan had posted a video online. Students quoted him in passing. 14 seconds, that's all she'll last." Kiana trained alone, early mornings before the sun rose. The gym sat in near silence, and in that quiet she moved with the ease of someone who had been here before. Not this building, but this place. The pressure, the fight, the doubt. She drilled until the muscles in her body didn't have to think. Escapes, sweeps, submissions. Her shadow mirrored her movements against the wall, dancing through every transition. The skills were in her bones, earned far from here. One evening, while she practiced alone, the front door creaked open. Kiana turned. An older black man walked in. No GI, just sweatpants and a gray t-shirt. His hair was close-cropped, streaked with gray. A faint scar lined his jaw. Their eyes met. Something passed between them, quiet recognition. He nodded once, then without a word, turned and walked out. The night before the match, Kiana sat on The floor of her apartment, the room dim but calm. A single candle flickered before her. Beside it lay the wooden box that held her brother's belt and a framed photo of the two of them in uniform, arms around each other, smiling, young. Tomorrow, she whispered, running her fingers along the edge of the frame. You'll see me again, wherever you are. She closed her eyes and slowed her breathing, deep, controlled, the kind of stillness taught to warriors who lived in the shadows and learned to quiet storms from within. Friday came, and the gym transformed into something else. By 7:30, the place was packed. People crammed shoulder to shoulder. The mat space had been cleared and marked off. Someone had brought in a cheap spotlight that now lit the center like a stage. Phones were already out. Everyone was recording. Coach Whitmore strutted through the crowd, all smiles and handshakes. He wore a black polo with the gym logo, his black belt tied proudly even though he wouldn't be stepping onto the mat. This was his arena, and he was the showman. Where? Is she? Someone shouted as 8 o'clock neared. $50 says she chickens out, another voice chimed in. Just then, the door opened. Logan walked into loud cheers. He wore a custom rash guard that read, Queenslayer across the back. His swagger filled the room as he slapped hands and winked at students. Let's get this over with, he said, cracking his neck. I've got a party to catch, and the only submission I care about is from the blonde waiting there. Laughter erupted. Coach clapped him on the shoulder like a proud father. Then, right at 8, the door opened again. The room shifted. Kiana entered, alone, calm, unbothered. She wore a black rash guard and gray shorts. Her hair was tied back tightly. Her walk was quiet, but every step landed with purpose. She said nothing as she reached the mat and began stretching, her movements smooth and precise. Slowly, the laughter began to fade. There was something different. Now, something in the way she moved, the stillness in her eyes. The crowd leaned in, unsure what they were witnessing. Some of the mockery turned into whispers, curiosity, doubt. Coach stepped to the center of the mat, his voice ready to command the room. The challenge was about to begin. Coach Whitmore stepped forward like he was hosting a show, his voice loud and dramatic. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, drawing cheers from the packed gym. Welcome to Challenge Night. The energy in the room spiked. Tonight, he continued, we've got something special. Our very own Logan Bradley. More cheers erupted. We'll go head-to-head with our newest member, who apparently thinks she's ready for the big leagues. He turned to Kiana, gesturing toward her with fake politeness. The rules are simple. 1 round, no time limit, submission. Only. His smile shifted, sharp and smug. Winner takes all. Loser walks away for good. Logan bounced on his toes at the far end of the mat, eyes wild with anticipation. He looked like a fighter about to devour a meal. Meanwhile, Kiana stood. Still, no bounce, no flash. Her breath calm, her focus locked on something only she could see. Let's get this show on the road, Coach called out. Both competitors stepped to the center. The mat creaked under their weight. Phones were raised high. Everyone wanted to capture the moment. Coach stood between them and placed a hand on Logan's shoulder, clearly choosing a side. Let's keep it clean, he said, but his eyes said something else as they flicked toward Kiana. Tap early, tap often. There's no shame in knowing you're outmatched. Logan smirked. Kiana didn't blink. Shake hands, Coach instructed. Logan extended his hand dramatically. Kiana took it without hesitation, firm, steady, unshaken. Try not to cry when I break something, Logan whispered, leaning in. Kiana didn't reply. Begin. Coach stepped back. The match was on. Logan started aggressive, circling quickly and jabbing forward, trying to make her flinch. Kiana moved smoothly with him, her feet gliding over the mat, keeping perfect distance. Stop dancing and take her down already, someone yelled from the crowd. Logan lunged. A double-leg takedown, fast but sloppy. Kiana responded with flawless precision. She sprawled low, stopped his momentum cold, and slid around to his side. In one clean motion, Her arm slid beneath his neck, her legs wrapped around his shoulders and arm. A triangle choke. It was quiet, eerily quiet. Logan panicked, his hands scrambling at her leg as the choke cut off blood to his brain. He tapped, fast, desperate. Kiana released instantly. 14 seconds. The silence that followed was suffocating. Coach's mouth was open. Logan sat up, gasping, red-faced, disoriented. "Rematch," he blurted, struggling to catch his breath. "That was a fluke." Coach jumped in, his tone too quick. Yeah, she caught you off guard. Let's reset, go again." Kiana shrugged. "Fine." The buzz returned. This time it was louder, fueled by disbelief. Phones were raised again, this time with more focus. Logan shoved away a water bottle a teammate offered him, rage coloring every move. He stomped back to the mat. His cocky attitude had vanished. "Ready?" Coach asked. Logan nodded. Tight. Angry. "Begin." This time Logan was careful. He circled slower, giving Kiana more space. He feinted twice before diving in for a single-leg takedown. Kiana sprawled again, but this time she used his momentum to pull him into her guard. Logan tried to press down with his weight, face tense and jaw clenched. From the outside, it looked like he was in control, like he was winning. But Kiana was already 3 steps ahead. She shifted her hips and created an angle that threw him off balance. In a flash, she reversed their positions. Now she was mounted on top of him, one arm trapped beneath her body. Then came the finish, a perfect armbar. Her hips pushed forward. His elbow bent in the wrong direction. Logan tapped. Fast. The pain was too much, even for pride. 11 seconds. The gym exploded. Some screamed. Some just stood there stunned. Nobody expected this, not Coach, not Logan. Not even the people filming, whose hands now shook as they captured the moment they'd never forget. Some people clapped, soft, unsure, but real. A few wore stunned expressions of genuine respect. Near the back of the room, Cody's fingers flew across his phone screen, a wide, victorious grin spreading across his face. On the mat, Logan stumbled to his feet, his face twisted with humiliation and disbelief. "She cheated," he shouted, the words sounding hollow even as they left his mouth. No one believed it, not really. What they had seen wasn't cheating. It was skill, unmatched, clean, and so precise that those who doubted her couldn't even explain what had just happened. It didn't look real, but it was. "That's not possible," Coach Whitmore muttered, his face pale. "Nobody taps Logan. Nobody." Kiana stood calmly at the center of the mat. Her breathing was even. Her posture never wavered. She looked from Coach to Logan, to the crowd that was now murmuring in every direction. "Free year's membership," she said plainly. That was the deal. The room erupted with voices. Phones lifted high to replay what had just happened. Some rewound the video in disbelief, watching every frame. Others looked at each other in quiet validation, especially those who had spent too long surviving the gym's toxic atmosphere. Cody worked his way through the crowd until he stood beside Kiana, breathless, phone in hand. "I got all of it," he said. "Both submissions, clear as day." Logan shoved past a cluster of students, his face burning with rage, and stormed into the locker room. Coach trailed behind him, but the damage had already been done. The whispers had started, and they weren't going to stop. "Who is she?" That triangle was lightning fast. "She's no beginner." Rachel appeared beside Kiana, a mixture of awe and concern in her eyes. I don't even know what that was," she said. "But be careful. Logan doesn't lose, and he definitely doesn't lose like that. He's going to take this personal." Almost on cue, the sound of something heavy crashing against concrete echoed from the men's locker room, followed by loud shouting and curses. Coach's voice could be heard trying to calm Logan, but it was no use. The gym's golden boy was unraveling in front of everyone. "I was set up," Logan's voice rang out. "Nobody told me she had training. This whole thing was rigged." Back on the mat, Kiana began packing her things, unaffected by the eyes still on her. None of this was new. She'd been doubted. Before. She'd been counted out, overlooked, dismissed, and still, here she was. She didn't need to explain herself. She had made her point. Outside, the night air was cool and calming compared to the thick tension of the gym. As she made her way to her car, she heard footsteps behind her and turned to see Cody jogging up, still gripping his phone like it held the world inside it. "That was amazing," he said softly. "The way you moved." He didn't stand a chance. Did he? No, Kiana answered. He didn't. You think I should upload it? Cody asked, hesitating. She thought for a moment. It's your video, your choice. Cody nodded, the weight of that decision settling in his expression. People should see it, not just because of Logan. There are other gyms like this one, other people getting pushed out. That night, Kiana sat cross-legged on her apartment floor. The light from a single lamp glowed softly beside her. Her phone buzzed. Cody had uploaded the video. By midnight, it had over 5,000 views. By morning, 20,000 comments poured in. Who is this woman? Logan Bradley got humbled. 14 seconds against a black belt. Is this real? Kiana watched the numbers rise, her expression unreadable. Fame had never been her goal, but invisibility wasn't her intention either. She had learned over time that being seen, really seen, was sometimes its own form of resistance. By the next day, the internet had fully caught wind of what happened. Coach Whitmore posted a vague, formal statement to the gym's social media. Last night's challenge match resulted in an unusual outcome. While impressive, it serves as a learning opportunity. Even champions have off days. We look forward to a rematch that better reflects the excellence we strive for. But it was too late. The video was being shared everywhere. The comment sections weren't buying Coach's spin. If anything, they were doubling down. Off day. He tapped twice, in under 15 seconds, and now other videos were surfacing. Stories were beginning to unfold. The truth had finally stepped onto the mat, and it came wrapped in black and gray with calm eyes and nothing left to prove. Clips from old training sessions had begun surfacing online, Logan strutting around. Like a king, Coach Whitmore openly dismissing female students, and the overall atmosphere of exclusion and ego. Someone had compiled a montage, a highlight reel of the gym's worst moments. It ended with Logan's cocky 14 seconds sweetheart taunt, followed by footage of his humiliating defeat in that exact time frame. When Kiana walked into the gym the next morning for training, the entire mood had shifted. People nodded at her with respect. Some approached with questions, actual questions about technique. The same students who once rolled their eyes now watched her with curiosity, or maybe even quiet admiration. Logan was nowhere to be found. Neither was Coach Whitmore. During a quick break, Rachel came over, her face tight with worry. "My uncle's on the warpath," she said under her breath. "He's trying to spin the story, but the videos are everywhere now." She paused before continuing. "Logan trashed the locker room after everyone left last night. Broke a mirror, knocked over half the equipment. He lost it." Kiana wasn't surprised. "Figures." Rachel leaned in closer, her voice even softer. "There's something else. Someone left a comment on one of the videos. Said he recognized you. Retired military guy." Kiana's body stiffened. "He called you Spectre. Said he trained with you. Said people should wish anyone good luck trying to beat you." Before Kiana could respond, her phone buzzed. A new email. The sender was anonymous. The subject line read only one word: Spectre. Kiana stepped outside, her pulse rising. She opened the email, no message, just a single attachment. She tapped it. Open, and her breath caught. It was a grainy surveillance photo, but the figure in it was unmistakable. Her brother. He was in civilian clothes walking through a market that looked Middle Eastern. The timestamp in the corner read 07/19/2018, 6 months after the military had told her he'd died. Her heart thundered. The photo blurred as emotions surged through her chest. If this image was real, if he had been alive after they said he wasn't, then the story she had believed for years was a lie. His death, her discharge, The silence afterward, all of it, false. She looked back at the gym, at the students inside, still training, still chatting, still unaware that something seismic had just shifted inside her world. Logan's defeat, coaches, ego, the viral storm. It all suddenly felt small, insignificant compared to what she had just seen, compared to what it meant. Her phone buzzed again. Another notification. Cody's video had crossed 100,000 views and was still climbing. Someone had found her, and they wanted her to know they had. Someone knew who she really was, what she had done, and more importantly, what had been kept from her. Kiana slipped her phone into her pocket. Her mind clicked into place like it always did in the field. Alert, focused, tactical. This wasn't about bullies anymore. This was something else, something deeper. Someone was pulling strings, and they had just invited her back into the game. By Monday morning, Kiana's world had changed in every direction. The match video had exploded online, passing 500,000 views. What began as a personal test, inside a toxic gym had transformed into a cultural moment. A spark for everyone who'd ever been underestimated, excluded, or silenced. On martial arts forums, experts were breaking down her technique frame by frame. Some viewers were suspicious, saying no newcomer moved like that. Others started connecting dots she had worked hard to keep apart. "That's Spectre," one commenter posted. "Retired Marine here, trained with her once, felt like rolling with a ghost." "She was always 3 steps ahead," someone else replied. "No way. Spectre's just a military myth," another chimed in. "Believe what you want," the first person shot back. "But I've seen an old video from a black ops hand-to-hand training class. The way that woman moved, it's her. Same precision, same control. If that's really Spectre in the gym footage, that loudmouth never had a chance." The thread kept growing. Hundreds of replies, some curious, some skeptical. But the myth was taking shape in real time. The silent woman in black who walked into a hostile gym and changed everything with 2 quiet, devastating submissions. She was no longer just a mystery. She was a signal. A ghost had reappeared, and this time, she wasn't hiding anymore. Kiana scrolled through the online conversations with a growing sense of unease. She had worked hard to disappear after her military discharge. New city, low profile, no digital trail. But with one viral video, pieces of her past were being pulled into the open. And while the internet chatter was unsettling, it wasn't what kept her awake at night. The image of her brother, that single grainy surveillance photo, was what haunted her most. She had spent the weekend studying every detail. The location looked like a market in northern Iraq. The architecture, the signs, the shadows. The timestamp seemed real. And his face, it was him. Thinner, older, harder, but unmistakably her brother. Alive. Walking freely in a place where he was supposed to have died in a crash. Someone had sent this for a reason. The question gnawed at her, why now? When she arrived at the gym for morning training, the mood inside was completely different. Students who once avoided her now nodded in acknowledgement. Some even approached with questions. Respectful, thoughtful questions. A few unfamiliar faces lingered, people who had probably seen the video and were hoping to catch a glimpse of the woman being called Spectre. Coach Whitmore was notably absent. A paper at the front desk said all his classes would be handled by assistants for the week. The excuse was a family emergency, but Kiana didn't believe that for a second. The timing said it all. As she quietly wrapped her hands, Rachel appeared beside her, glancing around before she spoke. "My uncle's losing it," she whispered. "He held an emergency meeting with his top students yesterday. No phones allowed, door locked." "What happened?" Kiana asked, keeping her focus on her rap. "Total meltdown," Rachel said, her voice filled with disbelief. "He kept ranting about controlling the story, about loyalty. Some of the brown belts are finally starting to question him, asking why he protected Logan for so long, why he ignored the bullying." Kiana gave a slight nod, but said nothing. She wasn't here for gym politics. Not anymore. Rachel continued. And Logan's been suspended. They're calling it a mental health break, but it's just damage control. He cornered Cody in the locker room and threatened him. Told him he'd regret uploading that video. That made Kiana pause. Is Cody okay? For now, Rachel said. But Logan's spiraling. He's convinced you and Cody set him up. Says you ruined everything. After Rachel left to teach her class, Kiana's phone lit up with notifications. Local news stations wanted to interview her. Podcasts extended invites. 2 women's self-defense organizations asked her to speak at their events. She turned them all down with short, polite replies. She wasn't interested in the spotlight. You're passing up some big chances, Cody said when they met later for coffee. His phone was buzzing nonstop with notifications, his grin still wide from everything that had unfolded. I'm not here to be famous, Kiana replied. I'm here for the truth. Cody looked confused. The truth about what? She hesitated. He had proven himself trustworthy, but some things were too heavy, too complicated to explain. Her past, her brother, the kind of operations they were part of. It's complicated, she said softly. Well, Cody replied, lowering his voice as he slid his laptop toward her. While you figure that out. I found something. On the screen was a military message board. It was restricted, definitely not meant for civilians, but Cody had somehow gained access. Thread titles filled the page. Spectre sighting confirmed, Project Emberlight returns, and more like them. This Project Emberlight keeps showing up, Cody said as he scrolled. It sounds like some kind of black ops unit. Psych warfare, mixed with elite hand-to-hand combat. Kiana stayed still, but her pulse picked up. She knew that name. Project Emberlight wasn't supposed to exist. It had been a joint special operations program buried deep in classified files. It trained operatives to survive in hostile territory, using stealth, psychology, and raw skill. Her brother was one of the first recruits. She had joined 6 months later. The 2 of them were natural together, strategic, silent, deadly. Officially, the project never happened. But here it was, whispered in fragments on a forum Cody had somehow hacked, and the world was watching again. You shouldn't be on those sites, Kiana said, pushing the laptop back toward Cody. Some of those people don't take kindly to civilians digging around. Too late, Cody shrugged. Besides, they're talking about you. Don't you want to know what they're saying? Before she could answer, her phone buzzed. A text. Unknown number. Check your car. Kiana stood up fast. I'll be right back, she said, and walked briskly toward the parking lot. Every instinct she'd trained kicked in. Her eyes scanned corners, rooftops, shadows. At first glance, everything seemed normal. But as she neared her vehicle, she saw it. Glass shattered on the driver's side windshield. A spiderweb of cracks radiating out from a single strike point. Beneath the wiper, a folded note flapped in the breeze. She pulled it out carefully, using her sleeve to avoid leaving prints. You're not supposed to be alive. She scanned the lot again. No obvious cameras, no lingering cars, no eyes watching. This wasn't Logan. Too quiet. Too precise. This was a warning from someone who understood her world. Someone from her past. That night, sleep wouldn't come. Every time she closed her eyes, the memories surfaced, scrambled, jagged pieces of the final mission. Syria. The ambush, her brother's voice crackling through a bad radio connection. Get out now, that's an order, Kiana. Her refusal. The second blast, waking up days later in a field hospital in Turkey. And the words that followed. He didn't make it. Too dangerous to recover the body. She had accepted that truth because the alternative was too painful. But now the photo, him alive, forced her to consider what she never dared to believe. What if it had all been a lie? What if someone had staged it? By morning, Kiana was behind the wheel, driving out to a quiet suburban neighborhood, 40 miles from the city, to the last person who might have answers. James Griggs, a retired intelligence officer who had once been her handler during Project Emberlight. He opened the door after the third knock. Older now, more lines on his face, more gray at the temples, but his eyes were just as sharp. The kind of eyes that saw everything. Took you long enough, he said, stepping aside. His home was just as she remembered. Sparse. Couch, recliner, a coffee table stacked with military history books. No pictures, no clutter, no life. You've stirred up quite the mess, Griggs said, pouring coffee into plain ceramic mugs. 14 seconds, not exactly low profile. I'm not here about the video, Kiana said quietly. No, he replied, handing her the mug. You're here about your brother. She pulled out her phone and showed him the image. The surveillance photo. He didn't flinch, didn't even blink, just stared at it for a moment, like he'd seen it before. Is it real? She asked. Griggs set his coffee down and nodded slowly. Yes. The word hit harder than she expected. Her chest tightened. She had wondered, hoped, doubted, but hearing it confirmed out loud made it all feel painfully real. How long have you known? I had suspicions, he said. Right from the beginning. The mission was shut down too quickly. Paperwork pushed through too cleanly. Then your name popped up in an unauthorized resurrection file about 18 months ago. That sealed it for me. Unauthorized resurrection, she repeated. It's a term we use, he explained. When an operative declared dead or discharged is quietly brought back for off-the-record assignments. Your brother's name was flagged. He was reactivated. Why? She asked, her voice cracking. Why fake his death? Why lie to me? Griggs studied her for a long moment. Leverage, he said finally. You were the better asset, more instinctive, more adaptive, but also harder to control. Your brother was your weak spot. My guess? They faked his death to break that bond, made him disappear to keep you focused. And once you were out of the system, they pulled him back in, to keep him on a leash. Who's they? Kiana asked. That's the question, isn't it? Griggs leaned forward. Project Emberlight was officially shut down after your brother's so-called death, but people like you two don't just get tossed aside. My guess? A splinter group. Private contractors with government ties. They're still using your skills, just without the paperwork. I need to find him, Kiana said firmly. And someone wants exactly that, Griggs replied. Ask yourself, why now? Why send that photo right after your video goes viral? Why not sooner? He paused, then added, someone's moving. The pieces. You're just the next one they've set in motion. That evening, Kiana sat alone on the mat at Whitmore's gym. She had let herself in after hours, needing silence to think. The photo had changed everything. What began as a simple plan to train in a quiet space had spiraled into something deeper, something connected to her past, and now, possibly her future. She tied her belt with intention, the ritual anchoring her as her thoughts spiraled. This wasn't coincidence. The video, the photo, the reawakening of her name, it was all connected. They tried to erase me, she whispered to the empty room, but I didn't vanish. Her eyes scanned the mat, the same one where she had been doubted, mocked and finally proven right. Now it was time to make a different kind of impact. The week that followed brought waves through the gym. People poured in from across the city, hoping to train in the place where Spectre had surfaced. Attendance spiked. Coach Whitmore, however, was nowhere to be found. Whispers spread. He was lawyering up, trying to salvage the gym's name after its sudden fall from grace. Kiana kept her distance. She trained in the early hours long before the rush. Her routine became sharper, more focused. The photo of her brother was never far from her mind, nor was the truth Griggs had laid bare. Someone wanted her exposed, and she needed to be ready. When they stepped forward again, one night while drilling alone, she sensed a presence. She looked up and saw Rachel standing quietly near the mat, dressed to train, watching her closely. Mind if I join? Rachel asked. Kiana nodded. They bowed to each other, a gesture often skipped in the gym, but one Kiana never missed. I want to see what you can really do, Rachel said as she settled into guard. No holding back this time. Kiana raised an eyebrow. You sure? Absolutely. What followed wasn't just sparring, it was a masterclass. Rachel, a skilled purple belt with solid technique, couldn't keep up. Every move she made was countered. Every attempt at control was dismantled before it took shape. Kiana flowed with a calm precision, always 2 steps ahead. After 20 minutes and 6 taps, Rachel lay on her back, breathing hard, sweat beading. On her forehead, her expression was a mix of awe and exhaustion. "I believe you now," she said between breaths. "Believe what?" Kiana asked, reaching down to help her up. "That you're not just some random woman who beat Logan. You're something else, something rare." They sat on the edge of the mat, sipping water. For a moment, there was only silence. Then Rachel spoke again, her voice lower this time. "I need to tell you something about my uncle." Kiana turned toward her, picking up on the shift in her tone. "I think he's mixed up in something darker than just running a toxic gym," Rachel said, glancing toward the office. "Last week I went in there to look for tape, found a burner phone in his drawer." Kiana straightened. "You shouldn't have looked." "Maybe not," Rachel admitted. "But I did." She paused, choosing her words. The phone was unlocked. There were texts. One name came up again and again, Colonel Avery. It mentioned payment schedules, secret meetings. At first, I thought maybe it was drug stuff. But then, she hesitated. "I've heard that name before, Avery, in underground MMA circles. People say he fixes fights, sets up events that don't exist on any official record. No cameras, no rules, just money, power, and control." Kiana kept her face calm, but inside, every alarm was going off. Colonel Marcus Avery. He wasn't just some high-ranking name. He had been the commanding officer over Project Emberlight, a man whose ambition always outpaced his morals. If he was tied to Coach Whitmore, this wasn't just a coincidence. This was layered. "Be careful, Rachel," Kiana said quietly. "If what you're saying is true, these aren't the kind of people you want watching you." "Too late," Rachel replied, her voice grim. "I've been paying attention for months. There've been random cash drops into the gym's account, private lessons after hours with people who never show up during regular training. And Logan? He knew. That's why my uncle protected him, no matter how toxic he got. It fit. All of it." Kiana had been piecing things together slowly, but this brought it into focus. The gym's location, the security setup, the high student turnover. It was the perfect front. Disguised as a martial arts academy, it gave covert operatives a place to meet, train, and move quietly under the radar. "What are you going to do about it?" Kiana asked. Rachel hesitated. Then she surprised her. "I was hoping you'd tell me, because I get the sense you know a lot more about this Colonel Avery than you're letting on." Over the next few days, the gym started to shift. With Coach Whitmore still gone and Logan suspended, the tension lifted. Students who once kept quiet now spoke freely. They helped each other out, shared tips, laughed again. The fear that had filled the room was finally thinning. Kiana kept to her routine. But now she trained more closely with Cody. There was something in him, sharp mind, good instincts, and a real hunger to grow. He wasn't just a follower, he had potential. She taught him more than jiu-jitsu, breath control to stay calm under pressure, awareness drills to stay sharp, mindset training to hold his center no matter what came at him. One afternoon, after a long session that left him soaked in sweat, Cody finally asked, "Where did you learn all this?" "Experience." Kiana replied simply. "Military," he pushed, not letting it go. "Special forces? That's what people are saying online." Kiana didn't respond. She didn't need to. "I knew it," Cody said, his grin wide. "That's why you came to Whitmore's, right? You already knew something was off." "I came here to train," Kiana said evenly. Everything else came after. But the rumors were growing and Coach Whitmore tried to take back control. He posted a carefully crafted video online, standing tall in his black belt at the center of the mat. His tone was firm, but polished. "As many of you have seen, one of our newer students recently demonstrated exceptional skill during training," he began, deliberately skipping over the challenge match and Logan's defeat. At Whitmore Brazilian Jiu Jitsu Academy, we take pride in recognizing and nurturing talent. Kiana Moore's success reflects the quality of instruction provided here. He went on to claim partial credit for her progress, suggesting he'd seen her potential from day one and had been quietly coaching her behind the scenes. The internet wasn't buying it. Comment sections lit up, calling out the lies, pointing out contradictions, and digging up screenshots of Coach's past comments. Posts resurfaced where he mocked women in combat. The same mouth now praising Kiana had once denied the very idea of women deserving a place on the mat. His attempt at damage control was crumbling. Then Cody responded. He posted an edited version of the original challenge match, this time with audio, clear and damning. Coach's voice rang out through phones and laptops everywhere. Let's see if people like her can hang with the real killers. Hope she doesn't cry when Logan puts her in her place. She needs to learn humility. No woman disrespects what we've built here. This version spread even faster than the first, but this time, it wasn't just a fight people were watching. It was a reckoning. People were talking now, not just about Kiana, but about the deep-rooted sexism in martial arts. The quiet racism. The power trips behind belts. The kind of abuse that hides in plain sight, wrapped in tradition and toughness. Now none of it could hide anymore. Within days, a major MMA gear company that had supported Whitmore's gym for years publicly cut ties. They issued a brief statement. Our values no longer align. Other dominoes quickly followed. Several senior students left the gym altogether, choosing new training spaces with cleaner reputations. What took years to build was falling apart in days, and in the middle of it all, the world kept guessing. Who was Kiana Moore? Speculation about her background exploded. A former Navy SEAL appeared in a YouTube mini-documentary titled, Who is Spectre? In it, he talked about a secretive hand-to-hand combat program, one that once recruited a young black woman straight into special operations. He never said her name, but the message was clear. Spectre is real, he told the camera. I watched her break down men twice her size using techniques that looked effortless, but they weren't. They were impossible to stop. Fighting her was like playing chess 3 moves behind. Suddenly, Kiana was no longer a mystery to the internet. For someone who had spent years keeping her head down, the attention should have felt suffocating. But instead, it felt strategic. If someone, like Colonel Avery, had pulled strings to drag her back into the open, she could use the spotlight to flip the game. She just had to figure out why he wanted her in the first place before he realized she was rewriting the rules. Then came the next message. Thursday morning, Kiana received an email from an unknown sender. This time it wasn't a photo. It was a line of text. You want the truth? Come find it. Attached GPS coordinates, the location, roughly 3 states away. It screamed setup, a classic bait move. Still, if there was even the slightest chance her brother was being held nearby, it wasn't something she could ignore. She started marking out routes, calculating stops, weighing risk. That's when her phone rang. Did you see the news? Cody asked, skipping pleasantries. Coach just announced he's selling the gym. Said he's moving on to new opportunities. Kiana didn't miss a beat. Interesting timing. Yeah. Rachel overheard him booking a flight for tonight. The pieces fell into place. Whitmore wasn't retreating. He was being pulled out, cleaned up, removed before someone traced anything back to Colonel Avery, which meant that email wasn't just a trap. It was pressure, a move to push her into the ear. Open on their terms, Cody, she said, keeping her voice steady. I need to go somewhere. It might not be safe. The coordinates from the email, he asked almost immediately. Kiana blinked. How do you know about that? I've been monitoring your inbox ever since the first photo came through, Cody admitted, almost sheepishly. I set alerts for anything coming from anonymous sources, just in case. Under normal circumstances, it would have felt like a violation. But nothing about this was normal. And if anything, it showed his loyalty. Ran deep. Yes, she said. Those coordinates, I'm leaving tonight. "You're not going alone," Cody said quickly. "It's obviously a trap." "Obviously," Kiana agreed. "But it's also the only lead I've got." When she got back to her apartment to pack, Rachel was already waiting by the door. Her face was a mix of nerves and resolve. Cody told. "Me," Rachel said. "You're going after Colonel Avery, aren't you?" Kiana didn't hesitate. "I am, and you're not coming." "I am," Rachel said, stepping inside anyway. "My uncle is part of this. I need to know just how deep it goes." "You've already done enough," Kiana said, pulling a duffel from the closet. "This isn't another jiu-jitsu match. These people are dangerous. So am I, Rachel." Cut in even though her voice wavered just slightly. "And I can drive. 3 states is a long trip. Taking shifts is safer." Before Kiana could argue, another knock hit the door. It was Cody, backpack on, already packed. "I figured you'd try to sneak off," he said as he stepped inside. "So I just came." Kiana looked at them both. No, they weren't soldiers, they weren't trained operatives, but they had chosen to stand beside her. Not because they had to, but because it was right. And sometimes that mattered more than training ever could. There was power in their unity, even if it complicated things. Kiana looked at them both, her voice steady. "This isn't a road trip," she said. "Where I'm going, what I'm doing, it's tied to things most people don't understand." "Then, help us understand," Rachel said quietly but with conviction. Kiana hesitated. Going alone would have been cleaner, tactically smarter. But it also meant no backup, no second set of eyes, no one to witness if things went south. Having them along meant risk, but it also meant she wouldn't face it all in silence. "If you come," she finally said, her voice low and direct. "You follow my lead. No questions, no hesitation. If I say run, you run. If I say hide, you hide." They both nodded, serious now. "One more thing," Kiana added. "Whatever happens, whatever you see or hear, it stays between us. Some things aren't mine to share." Again they nodded. By dawn the next day, the 3 of them were on the road, packed into Rachel's SUV, headed toward a remote set of GPS coordinates 3 states away. The map labeled it as a decommissioned military storage site, long abandoned. But Kiana knew better. Before they left, she made one last stop. Back at Whitmore's gym, Kiana stepped quietly onto the mat. She folded her gi and laid it neatly in the center, her black belt placed across it. A symbol, a farewell. She wasn't hiding anymore. She was done playing by other people's rules. This time she was returning to the place where it had all begun, where her brother disappeared, where lies became orders, and where Project Emberlight turned protectors into weapons. This time she wasn't coming back alone. As the desert heat shimmered around them, Rachel's SUV crested a ridge. In the valley below, the compound came into view. It looked abandoned, just like the record said. Chain-link fencing sagged, under the sun. Concrete walls stood cracked and silent. There were no guards, no vehicles, no movement. But Kiana stiffened. "There's active security," she said, pointing toward the fence. "See those cameras? They're disguised as broken. Fixtures, motion sensors, too, embedded in the gravel. How do you know?" Cody asked, squinting through the windshield. "The dust patterns," Kiana replied. "Someone's been walking that perimeter, and a place like this still has power. That doesn't happen by accident." She guided Rachel to pull off the road, behind a rock outcrop 1/2 mile from the front gate. They crouched low and watched through binoculars. The facility was still. Too still. After nearly 20 minutes of silence, Rachel asked, "Now what?" As if on cue, a section of the fence near the gate slowly slid open. No lights, no sound. Just a quiet, deliberate invitation. "They're letting us in," Kiana said flatly. "It's a trap," Cody muttered. "Of course it is," she agreed. "But traps reveal intentions. And right now, that's all we've got." With Kiana leading, they moved down the dusty path. Rachel and Cody followed exactly as she'd instructed, 3 steps back, silent and alert. The gate stayed open as they entered, then closed behind them with a soft, eerie click. They were in, each footstep echoed across the gravel. the stillness swallowing every sound. Ahead stood the main building, 3 stories high with narrow windows like slits in a watchtower. The front door was solid steel, unmarked except for faded hazard stripes near the bottom. Before they reached it, the door opened. A man stepped out. Black tactical gear, combat boots, thick arms marked with faded military tattoos. His face was tough, skin weathered by time. He wore sunglasses even in the shade. "You were expected, Spectre," he said, his voice gravelly and full of history. Kiana showed no reaction to the name. Her face was unreadable. "By who?" she asked calmly. The man's mouth twitched, almost like a smile. "By those who remember. Project Emberlight." He glanced at Rachel and Cody. "Though your companions weren't invited." "They go where I go," Kiana said firmly. He studied them for a moment, then gave a curt nod. "Your call. But not everyone's happy you came." Then he turned and walked back into the building, expecting them to follow, and without a word, they did. Inside, the air was cool and still, a sharp contrast to the scorching heat outside. Their boots echoed against the concrete floor as the man in tactical gear led them down a series of hallways. The building had once been a major operation. Branching doors revealed what used to be barracks, training zones, and supply rooms. Most were abandoned now. Old bunks, broken desks, dust, gathering in corners. But some parts told a different story. Fresh footprints, lights that worked, and vents quietly humming. There was still life here, hidden beneath the silence. "What is this place?" Rachel whispered. "Officially?" the man said without looking back. "It doesn't exist. Used to be a black site for special projects, the kind no one wanted. Oversight on. Now it's a ghost, only used when needed." They followed him down a stairwell to a lower level. Here the air was cleaner, brighter lights buzzed overhead. They passed a room full of outdated tech, old monitors, blinking servers, dusty surveillance tools. Kiana slowed. A photo hung on a bulletin board, faded but still legible. A team of soldiers in desert camo, their faces mostly blurred out. All. But 2. Kiana's younger self stood on the far end. Next to her, unmistakably, was her brother. "Keep moving," the guide said, but his voice had softened. At the end of the hallway was a reinforced steel door with a modern palm scanner, a strange touch of new in a place built on secrets. The man pressed his hand against it. A green light blinked. The door slid open. They stepped into a command room. Screens lined the walls, showing camera feeds, maps, data streams. In the center sat a large table surrounded by empty chairs. This was a place for briefings, for decisions. At the head of the table sat a man in his 60s. Sharp suit, silver, hair, posture like steel. His eyes followed Kiana closely. "Sergeant Moore," he said, his voice smooth. "Or do you go by Spectre now? Seems the name's been making headlines again." "Colonel Avery," Kiana answered, her tone cold but steady. Rachel and Cody exchanged a quick look. They recognized the name immediately. Avery motioned to the chairs across from him. "Please, have a seat. We have much to talk about." Kiana didn't move. "Where's my brother?" Avery raised an eyebrow. "Straight to the point. That's what made you so good in the field." He folded his hands. "Yes, your brother is alive, as you've now confirmed, but he's not here." "Then, why am I?" "Because before anything happens," Avery said, "you need to understand the bigger picture." He nodded at one of the screens. A satellite image appeared. Another facility, this one surrounded by empty desert. It looked similar to where they stood now, but it wasn't the same. "He's there," Avery explained. "It's a secure compound, technically outside U.S. borders, which puts him in a legal gray zone, no official rules. Convenient." "Convenient for who?" Kiana's voice was sharp now. "For the people who still find value in his skills," Avery replied. "The same people who found you too unpredictable, too principled. You asked questions. He followed orders. When Project Emberlight stopped being about defense and turned into assassination," Kiana said. Avery didn't flinch. "Call it what you want. The mission changed. He adapted. You didn't. You faked his death to control me, she said, each word falling like a weight. Made me believe I left him behind. A tactical choice, Avery said without remorse. Your connection to him made you vulnerable. We used that. For what? Kiana asked. Avery leaned forward, his voice lowering. To keep you quiet. As long as you believed he died. Especially. Denop, you survived. You carried guilt. It kept you from asking questions, from digging. Until now, Rachel cut in, unable to stay silent. Avery's eyes shifted toward her. Calm, but calculating. He studied her like a puzzle. Then, slowly, he smiled. Yes, Kiana said. Until now. Colonel Avery shifted, folding his hands. Again, as he looked straight at her. Then let's talk. I have an offer, a way for you to see your brother again. Kiana's voice was steady. I'm listening. 1 year, Avery said. We need someone with your specific talents. You complete a series of missions, clean, quiet, effective, and when it's done, you both walk free, you and your brother, pardoned. No more ties. Cody took a step forward, his voice shaky but firm. Don't trust him. This is exactly how they... I decline, Kiana cut in. Her tone didn't waver. Avery's jaw tensed. I suggest you reconsider. Sergeant, this is a one-time offer. I've considered it, she replied calmly. And the answer is no. Her stance shifted just slightly. A trained eye would notice it. She was preparing to act. My brother was taken on a lie, she said, voice low. I was fed a false story, manipulated. Whatever you're doing, now it's not official, and it's not right. Official is a flexible word in our line of work, Avery said, his voice growing colder. Perhaps you need motivation to rethink your position. His eyes moved slowly toward Rachel and Cody. Your friends here, they've seen and heard far too much. And in a world of classified shadows, things happen. People disappear. Accidents are common. The threat was clear. Kiana's hands clenched at her sides. That's where you've misjudged me, she said, almost a whisper. You still think I'm a soldier who follows orders, who respects your chain of command, she stepped forward, her eyes locked on his. But I'm not her anymore. Everything happened at once. 2 guards by the door lunged toward Rachel and Cody. Avery reached under the table, likely going for a weapon or alarm, but Kiana was faster. She struck the first guard in the throat with a precise palm strike, sweeping. His legs in one clean motion. He toppled into the second guard before either could react. Then she moved, closing in on Avery, grabbing his wrist in a tight lock that froze him mid-reach. Rachel. Cody, go, she shouted. Service tunnel, left side of the corridor. As she restrained Avery, she reached into his jacket and pulled out a key card and a small hard drive. Rachel grabbed Cody's arm and bolted for the exit. 4 more guards burst into the room. Kiana shoved Avery backward into the table and met the new threat head-on. No hesitation, no mercy. This wasn't the version of her that Jim had seen. This was Spectre, unleashed. Her movements were fluid and sharp. Each strike had purpose. Each block turned into a counter. She disarmed 2 guards with joint locks that left them groaning on the ground, then ducked under a baton swing and used a nearby chair to block another. Through the chaos, Rachel and Cody made it to the hallway. Seconds later, Kiana followed, slamming the heavy door behind her and swiping. Avery's card through the external reader. A click confirmed it. Locked. This way, she said, taking the lead down the corridor. Alarms screamed overhead. They ran through a maze of halls until they found it. The service tunnel, a narrow, sloped passage barely lit by red emergency lights. Shadows flickered as they ran. Behind them, boots pounded and voices shouted. They're close, Cody gasped, struggling to keep up. We're almost out, Kiana said, pointing ahead. Faint daylight was seeping through a metal grate. They burst into the open, squinting against the desert sun. 100 yards away, Rachel's SUV sat where they left it, half hidden by the rocks. They sprinted across the dirt. Then came the sound, deep and sharp. An engine roared behind them. From a side entrance of the facility, a black armored vehicle tore through the dust. kicking up sand as it sped after them. Through the tinted windshield, they saw Colonel Avery's face twisted with rage. His eyes locked onto theirs for a brief second. "He's getting away," Rachel panted as they reached the SUV. "Let him," Kiana said, still watching as the armored vehicle sped past and veered toward the highway. "He thinks he's in control, but now we know what matters most to him." As they climbed into the car, Avery's vehicle disappeared over the ridge, but not before he rolled down his window and yelled one last jab. "You can't erase what you were trained to be. You belong to me." Kiana didn't flinch. She simply raised the small hard drive in her hand, the one she'd taken from his pocket. "Not anymore," she whispered. They were halfway to the main road when Kiana suddenly told Rachel to stop. She stepped out, pulled a small device from her pocket, and pressed a short sequence of buttons. "What is that?" Cody asked as she returned to the car. "Insurance," Kiana replied. "Standard issue detonator for when cleanup matters." Moments later, the desert behind them lit up. Explosions thundered through the ground as smoke and flames erupted from multiple spots. The hidden compound, the facility that wasn't supposed to exist, was going up in fire. "You just blew up a government building?" Rachel asked, her voice caught between awe and disbelief. "No," Kiana said calmly. "I erased a black site used for illegal operations. There's a difference." For a long while they drove in silence, each lost in their thoughts. The truth was settling in. They'd gone up against a powerful man with deep ties, and now he knew exactly who had stood against him. "What happens now?" Cody asked as the edge of the desert gave way to hints of the city beyond. Kiana didn't look away from the window. Her reflection stared back, quiet but unshaken. "Now we find my brother." 3 days later, the city skyline came into view. Their return had been careful. Kiana had them switch cars twice, sleep in motels that didn't take names, and pay in cash. She explained it wasn't paranoia, it was protocol. During those days, Kiana opened up more, about Project Emberlight, about the mission that split her from her brother. She didn't say everything. Some parts were still classified, but she shared enough for Rachel and Cody to finally understand the weight she'd been carrying. The hard drive they'd recovered held more than names and operations. It showed where her brother was likely being held. It wasn't enough for a rescue, not yet, but it was something to build on. Proof. As they re-entered familiar neighborhoods, a strange quiet fell over the group. Coming back to normal life felt almost surreal. After everything they'd just seen, it didn't feel real anymore. "The gym's already changing," Rachel said, eyeing a street sign as they passed. "Word's out that my uncle's gone. Half the students have already canceled their memberships." "What will you do?" Kiana asked. Rachel thought for a moment. "The space is still paid for, 6 more months. Someone should help the remaining. Students land somewhere safe, might as well be me." When they arrived at Whitmore Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, the place felt ghostly. A handwritten sign hung on the door, "Classes temporarily suspended." Inside, the front desk sat empty. The mats were quiet, and in the center, untouched, lay Kiana's folded GI and belt, right where she'd left them. Over the next few weeks, small but important changes took root. With help from a few senior students, Rachel started the process to take over the lease. The name Whitmore came down. For now, the new sign read Mat 14, a quiet nod to Kiana's now famous submission time. Meanwhile, Cody stepped up. His experience, his heart, and his tech skills made him a natural with the younger students, especially those who knew what it was like to be bullied or overlooked. Kiana kept a low profile, training during quiet hours, but behind the scenes she wasn't idle. She reached out to former contacts she could still trust, passed along parts of the intel from the drive, shared just enough to get the wheels turning, and 4 weeks later, it happened. A news alert broke. A former high-ranking military officer had been arrested on charges of financial crimes. It was just the beginning. The news reports didn't mention Project Emberlight. There was no talk of covert ops or secret missions, only financial crimes tied to private military contracts. But Kiana knew better. This was the beginning of Colonel Avery's fall. The story barely made headlines, just a footnote in the 24-hour news cycle. But behind the scenes, in certain powerful circles, it sent a message. Avery had finally lost his shield. Coach Whitmore, who had quietly moved to another state, found himself alone. No more protection. His reputation shattered. He became just another disgraced coach with a past no one wanted to touch. Logan's path looked different. After weeks of silence, he reappeared at the National Jiu Jitsu Expo, an event that brought together athletes and fans from across the country. People were shocked to learn that Kiana had agreed to do a live demo at the Saudi exhibition. Her appearance stirred a buzz so loud the entire hall filled beyond capacity. Spectators pushed against the barriers, phones ready to capture a glimpse of the woman who had become a symbol, not just of technique, but of standing up against arrogance. Just as Kiana stepped onto the mat to begin, a stir rippled through the crowd. At the back, someone pushed through, determined. Logan, his voice cut through the noise. "I want a rematch," he said loudly. "Right here, right now." Gasps filled the room, excitement mixed with confusion. Event organizers scrambled, unsure what to do. Kiana looked him over carefully. He was leaner now, more focused. Gone was the cocky smile. His eyes, once dismissive, now held something closer to respect. "Are you sure?" she asked quietly. "I've been training for this since that night," Logan replied. His tone had lost its edge. "I need to know if it was a fluke." Kiana nodded once. "Different rules this time, 5 minutes, points. Real jiu-jitsu, no ego." "Agreed," he said. Officials confirmed the match. Unlike their first encounter, this wasn't a quick ending. Logan had clearly done his homework. He had answers for her setups, counters to her sweeps. He fought smart, with grit, not pride. Kiana met him with calm precision. Where he had strength, she had timing. Where he had studied, she had experience. They pushed through the full 5 minutes. When the final bell rang, Kiana had won, not by submission, but by advantage points. Both were winded, drenched in sweat, but still standing. Logan stepped forward and held out his hand without hesitation. "Good match," he said, the words genuine. Kiana shook his hand. "You've improved." He paused. "I still don't like you." "You don't have to," Kiana replied. "Just respect the art. Respect your training partners, that's what matters." The crowd erupted in applause. Event organizers invited Kiana to speak. She stood at center mat, dozens of phones filming, the spotlight not just on her, but on her message. "I came here to train," she began, her voice even. "Not to prove anything, but sometimes the mat forces us to face hard truths. About skill, yes, but also about character." Her eyes moved across the room. About systems that protect the wrong people for the wrong reasons. She spoke of the culture she'd faced, not just at Whitmore's, but throughout her martial arts journey. Instructors who abused power, students who confused bullying for strength, and the silence that let it all happen. "I fought in silence. For a long time," she said. "No more. This art deserves better, we all do." The crowd stood and cheered, not just fans, but fellow students, teachers, survivors of similar stories. In that moment, her personal stand became something more. Movement. A call for change in a world long overdue for it. In the weeks that followed, Rachel reopened the gym, this time under a new name, Mat 14 Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. The place looked different. Clean walls, fresh paint, no more toxic slogans. In their place, a simple message, bold and honest. Skill. Respect. Community. On the very first day, the mats of Mat 14 welcomed a mix of new students, young and old, beginners and experienced. Many of them said the same thing as they signed in. "I came because of her." Kiana's story wasn't just something they heard. It was the reason they showed up. Rachel led the classes with purpose. Her teaching was rooted in clarity, not control. She focused on technique, not rank. It was everything her uncle's gym hadn't been. A space where students were seen, not sized up. And Cody? He had grown into a coach of his own, once the shy white belt who had been unsure of himself, he now taught the kids classes. He focused on confidence, anti-bullying skills, and teaching kids how to rise after being knocked down. He knew exactly how it felt to be the smallest one in the room. Now, he made sure no one else felt invisible. One evening, after a long session with advanced students, someone approached Kiana at the front desk. "Special delivery," the attendant said, handing her an envelope. The guy said it was for you only. Inside was a single photograph and a handwritten note. In the photo, her brother stood tall, holding a newspaper dated that same morning. He looked healthy, strong, alive. The note read, "Now the real game begins." But it wasn't just a message. It was code. The way his fingers were placed, the way the newspaper tilted, the background behind him. It all meant something. Only someone trained like Kiana could read it. He was telling her where he was. More importantly, he was telling her he had control. He wasn't a prisoner. He was moving with purpose. Colonel Avery's arrest had cracked the walls of the operation that had held her brother. That photo wasn't the start of a chase. It was an invitation to something new. Avery had set a trap. But this time, Kiana and her brother were building their own map. The next morning, Kiana sat alone in the meditation room at Mat 14th. Sunlight spilled across the quiet space. She wore her white gi, no belt. Just the cloth, simple and clean. A symbol of what really mattered, where you start and who you choose to become. Her breathing slowed. Her thoughts stilled. And for the first time in a long time, the future felt sharp and clear. Her brother was alive. Avery's lies were falling apart. And everything that once held her down was losing its grip. When she opened her eyes, the door slid open. Rachel stood there. Cody stood beside her. And behind them, students who had trained, supported, and stood by Kiana when it counted most. They quietly lined the edge of the mat, saying nothing but saying everything. They were ready. Kiana stood. She looked at each of them, one by one. "I'm Hais." "Not a belt," she said softly, repeating the words she once whispered to herself. "I'm not a rank, I'm what they tried to bury." Then she stepped forward onto the mat. No spotlight, no stage, just a moment of quiet power. The others followed, forming a line behind her. She wasn't leading them with commands. She was walking ahead because she had survived, because she had rebuilt, because they trusted her. And in that image, Kiana in front, surrounded not by the darkness of her past, but by the light of what she had created. There was something deeper than victory. In that moment, she wasn't Sergeant Moore. She wasn't Spectre. She was just Kiana, unranked, unbroken, unbound. Spectre rises. Was it ever really about those 14 seconds that shocked the world? Or was it about the years of silence that made her unshakable?